G'day everybody, how are you going today? It is so very good to see you. I do hope you're well. Wow, the A1, what a camera, absolutely amazing. Perhaps giving us more than we ever thought was possible, and perhaps giving us more than most of us really will ever need. Now, this is not a criticism. In no way, shape or form is that statement a criticism. It's not. What I would like this video to be is a discussion, an opening of the conversation of where do photographers, and let's be honest, most of us are in the photographic, we buy photographic equipment, we look at photographic equipment for the purpose of photography. So I'm going to call us photographers. And yes, a large number of people now are also into video. And let's say that there is something like, I don't know, 20 to 30% of people who are buying what is traditionally photographic cameras are using them for video as well. Let's say something like that. But even then, the A1 is an absolutely blisteringly high-spec camera with its 8K at 30 FPS. I want to have a conversation about what is the maximum spec that anyone might think they'll actually really use. There's no question that having the absolute fastest Veyron or Bugatti or Ferrari or Lotus or Porsche, there's no question having that fastest version is fun, is exciting, is something to talk about, is something to brag about. All those things are true and fair. No problem with it. I don't have a problem with it. If you want to buy the fastest, biggest, loudest, whatever, you can, totally. That's where you can put your coin, no problem. But what I want to reach out, and I'm really interested in collecting data here because I think we've reached a bit of a nexus point with the arrival of the A1. I'd love to collect data about realistically, what do you think is the limit of your needs? I really want to get some hard data because people will jump in the comments and go, oh yeah, I really need 30 frames a second at 50 megapixels. Okay. I'm sure some people do think they need that, and that's fine. Absolutely, you can have it and you can use it and you can spend the $6,500 to get it. Cool. What I'm looking to get a sense of is what percentage of the market actually now needs these blistering specs. And I want to be completely transparent as to why. And this is a conversation I've kind of had before about this notion that maybe not all companies, camera companies, are going to want to live on the technological blistering bleeding edge, simply because, let's just pick a number for this conversation today, 95% of photographers don't need it and will never use it. We're just picking a random number today. Well, not random, I think it's reasonably good guesstimation. So what I want this video to be about is discussing the parameters, and then you letting me know in the comments below, what do you think is kind of the limitations of your photographic and your video needs? And obviously video is perhaps only 10, 20, 30%, I would have thought at max, as in high-end video, of the market out there. So let's talk about it. Right now, the Canon R5 shoots at 20 frames per second. And someone said to me in the comments, it shoots up to 30 frames per second electronic shutter. I don't know if that's true. Somebody let me know, that would be amazing. And of course, the Sony is doing 30 frames per second at 50 megapixels. So both of these cameras are blisteringly fast. Either way, whether it's with mechanical shutters or electronic shutters, whether it's 20 frames per second or 30 frames per second, either of these specifications are fast from my personal perspective. It's a lot. So that's frames per second. Let's talk about megapixels. So in megapixels, the R5 is 45 and the Sony is 50. Realistically, in the real world, when you're actually printing a print or whatever, the difference between 45 and 50 megapixels is negligible. So again, I ask the question, and I'm not asking it with any degree of criticism. Do you think you need more than 45 or 50 megapixels for your photography? Just simply let me know. This is all about collecting data and having a conversation. Have we reached the ceiling of what the majority of us want? And yes, if you are special and you need to fit into a niche market where you need 60 or 100 megapixels, then I suppose you'll find yourself buying the Sony a7R IV or buying something like a GFX 100, thus putting you in the niche category. So please let me know your thoughts on megapixels. Where does your limit lie? Let's talk about video. So both Canon and Sony have now got 8K video. On first look, it looks like the Sony will be doing 8K for longer without overheating. So look, I'm pretty excited about that. If you're going to give us something like 8K, you may as well give it to us and it works. Not only that, but we've also got 4K on both the R5 and the A1 running at 120 frames per second. And we've also got variants of bit rates and RAWs and all that sort of thing. Again, I'd love to know for you out there, are you interested in video at all? 1, yes or no? 2, if you are, is 1080p enough? Is 4K enough? Do you even need 8K? Now, if you're using 4K, do you need 120 FPS? Do you need RAW? Do you need more than 8-bit? Do you need 10-bit? So many variables with all these things. Isn't it absolutely amazing? Have we reached a point where, again, for the 95% of customers, is all the variants of 4K going to be enough? So 4K 8-bit, 4K 10-bit, 4K RAW, a 4K 120 FPS. Would that be enough for 95% of people? Or would even slower 4K, like the 4K that we have in a Z6, for example, which is full sensor, but it only runs at 30 FPS. Is that enough for 95% of people? Please let me know in the comments below. Where do you sit in the 4K conversation? So to me, look, they're the main things. Obviously, there's a lot of little things in regards to ergonomics and buttons and overheating and I/O, as in how do you get files in and out. There's also improvements in the back screens, the menus, the viewfinders, all sorts of stuff. But the reason I'm specifically talking about frame rates, megapixels, and video size and quality is because that's the result that we get out that then we go on to use for something else. And this question is about the result. Ultimately, what result, what outcome do you need? Do you need a 20 megapixel outcome, a 50 megapixel outcome, a 100 megapixel outcome? Do you need a 1080p outcome, a 4K outcome? I'm really interested in the outcome you foresee you're going to require, let's say for the next 2 or 3 years. To circle back to where we started, yes, the A1 is an astonishing flagship camera. This is so true. And yes, that technology is going to trickle down, and that's because, of course, the industry is always trying to improve and always trying to give us something new to purchase. These companies need us to buy every, 3 to 5 years would be my rough estimation on average in order to keep their business going. And I want people just to think about, if you have 30 frames per second at 50 megapixels, that is an astonishing amount of data that you're not only pushing through your camera, but you're collecting. What percentage of the population are looking for 30 frames per second at 50 megapixels? I want to understand, because understanding this will help us understand perhaps where Nikon end up landing, where they end up going, because they may well say, you know what, 95% of photographers don't need that blistering technology, and so we are going to give something that's, let's say more R5 level rather than A1 level. Because ultimately what I want to say here is this. Let's, for example, move this metaphor across to cars. Some companies make absolutely wonderful all-rounder cars that will do all sorts of things, but they won't go 375 kilometers per hour. They won't. But it will do literally everything else. And it satiates, it's totally reasonable, and 95% of the market are absolutely happy with that type of car, that segment where it fits in the world. And of course, it's cheaper. It's cheaper than the one that does 375 kilometers per hour. And then company B, well, they decide to make cameras that fit the 95%, plus they make some cameras for the 375 kilometre an hour market. Now, that doesn't mean there's anything at all wrong with company A that doesn't make those. So this is where I want you to have a bit of a internal conversation with yourself, because this constant measuring of specs, it's like, well, we've reached a point where it's like, great, the A1 is awesome and it's measured to be the largest, but actually 95% of the market does not need it, does not want it, and does not want to pay for it. And this statement that this sort of camera is marketing and draws people to that brand, I think they're words, but I don't think those words are true. I don't think they ring true at all. There's a certain segment of the community that might be bedazzled by this wow camera and go, I have to buy now the cheap version of this flagship camera. But I don't think that's the whole market. I think it's a pretty small percentage of people who buy into a camera brand because they've got this flagship device, which they'll never own. So let's try and be realistic. Let's try and say to ourselves, what do we want? What do we need? What are we using? What can we afford? Use case, budget, and legacy. Again, these are the things that drive the reality of our purchases. To close this out, the A1 is spectacular. Sony have done a great job. The R5 is also spectacular, and Canon did a great job. And I believe Nikon will find their place in the market, and they will create a camera that sits somewhere up here. And whatever camera they create, even if it's not as crazy as the A1, I do believe it will represent the needs of almost 99% of the market. And the rest of it, I would deeply, respectfully, and warmly suggest just simply becomes bragging rights. That's my personal opinion. But I want to collect the data. I don't want this to be ultimately about my opinion. I'll tell you what I need and what I want and what works for me. That's fine. That's just me. And then there's millions of you out there. I want to know what you think. And then we can understand how we all feel. And if this Nikon flagship camera is not as crazy as the A1, it doesn't mean any fail. It doesn't mean any of those things. What it means is we're just starting to hit the glass ceiling of what is required. The average car and its average top speed has not changed that much. And it's the same with cameras. We will reach a point where when we get to the top, it just doesn't need to change that much anymore. And there are other things that will be super important. Menus, ergonomics, weather sealing, button logic, the mount, the actual mount, the optics. All these things will become what's primarily important as focus speed, megapixels, and frame rates reaches its ultimate technological glass ceiling. But not just technological. Actually, what do we need? I don't think we need any more. All right, everybody. This video, it's not about me. It's about starting the conversation. It's about understanding what specs do you need? What specs do you want? What's going to work for you? What's going to be your limit where you just go, yeah, no, I don't need any more than this. Like, it's fantastic. It's exciting to see these rocket ships fly, but I don't need it. I'd love to know what you think. Fabulous. Well, as usual, it is absolutely so very good to see you. If this is your first time here, I'd love to see you again, so please subscribe. Please share, please like, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye for now.